What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, December 9th. We got football this evening, and we're going to dive into, but of course, we got to dive into news and notes around the league. And what better way to do it than with CBS Sports NFL insider Josina Anderson in our weekly chat. Josina, what's up?
What's up? How are you doing? Good to see you as always.
Likewise. You know what? We didn't talk last Thursday because. Did we talk last Thursday? Yeah, we did talk last Thursday.
Yeah, we did.
2 Thursdays ago was Thanksgiving.
Yes, it's okay.
Somebody referenced Thanksgiving, and I was like, oh, that was only a week ago. That's weird. It felt like longer. Turns out it was not. But
yummy.
I digress. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. Turn on your alerts and check us out live after games Sunday. Yeah, smash. Sunday, Monday, and Thursdays after every single primetime game. And, of course, Thursdays at 1 p.m. we do a pick show. And Tuesdays at 1 p.m., Ryan Wilson hosts the live mock draft show on our YouTube channel. The Pittsburgh Steelers play tonight against the Minnesota Vikings. And last week, I thought there's nothing funnier to me than when we see a big Ben Roethlisberger. Rumors come out ahead of a huge game. The Steelers have been struggling, and this news is leaked out that Ben is privately telling people he's going to retire. Like, oh, yeah. We know Ben. We watch the games. Buddy, we know you're retiring. But when that news gets leaked out, you know it means that Big Ben's due for a good game. And they thought he played really well against the Ravens. Of course, the Steelers get a huge win. No news is leaked out about Big Ben this week, but the retirement thing does linger. And it does feel like, Josina, that this will be his final year. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, per reports. I can't say that I'm hearing it directly. I always am very honest about what I hear and don't hear. But yes, I mean, obviously. And per the reports, yeah, and it just, as you mentioned so eloquently and jovially,
and our collective eyeballs, right?
Yes, and with the eye test, it would seem that would be the case. But it was funny because I can't remember if it was this show or if it was, or another one, but I think we had the conversation about Ben Roethlisberger and when it would be appropriate to start to mention that, just so that if indeed this is the last season and that's what is anticipated, that he could get his flowers and, do his sort of lap around and, people could be, recognized. And also at the same time, provide some sort of, I don't know if you want to use the word excuse for this season or however it goes, because this is kind of his last year. You know what I mean?
Well, the lap around thing, I hadn't even thought about. That's a great point. So if you're a big
get his flowers, yeah.
It's like it's the Derek Jeter, when he went, like they gave him a rocking chair in like Minnesota, and then he goes to Derek Jeter when he retired, he announced it a year before. So every time he went, then the Yankees played in a different stadium. He was treated with lavish gifts because Derek Jeter, the greatest.
We all want gifts. We all want flowers and appreciation, and you're great. And
I think the truly great ones would just walk away. Like if you're truly great, you just do what you do and then you walk away. Like Peyton Manning didn't have he's like called a press conference. I'm out, right? Like Big Ben wants everybody to know these might be the last few games you see out of Big Ben. So better appreciate old Big Ben before old Big Ben goes away. Is what he's saying.
The question is really whether that should have come at the beginning of the year. And, I had this conversation, I think, with Josh Norman the other day, and it's just like, but is it fair to the other 52 guys when you're kind of just in that space where, you should go, but you can't let it go, but the organization is not going to say go because of your, legacy with the franchise, but then the other 52 players just kind of have to hang on and, and can't say nothing, and twiddle their thumb. Although they did just come off of a win against the Ravens, and it just, that division is still up for grabs, as are many games up for grabs. We just saw the NFC West, and the 49ers and the Seahawks couldn't decide who wanted to win until, whatever. So I hear you, but, nonetheless, I don't know.
Well, it's like, I would say it's like this, is Big Ben was sort of embarrassed by how the Steelers punked him down. And we're like, hey, look, like he was like, they're like, you take a pay cut or else we're cutting you. And Big Ben's like, and then later he's like, I've decided for the good of the organization, I shall take a pay cut. Like, nobody takes a pay cut like because they want to.
Voluntarily.
Yeah. Like he's like, you didn't want to face the reality of not being able to find a job after you were cut by the Steelers and be forced to just retire.
I want less money.
Yeah, get paid. Actually, I'm not going to yell that. I'm not yelling that on a recorded podcast because the last thing I yelled, go Tar Heels. And Debo recorded that and he plays it every 5 minutes on me. Even though it was completely out of context. At any rate, I think
and I'm a Tar Heel, so I appreciate that.
Oh, that's right. I forget you're a Tar Heel. Yeah, I'm an NC State guy. Sorry about the final. I'm sure you're going to get us back in basketball. So the Big Ben is probably going to be done. And it makes sense. Like it would be crazy to come back for another year, given the contract setup, given, how he's played and where he's at. So probably done. How do you think the Steelers will handle his replacement in terms of where are they going to try and look to be aggressive and to go after Aaron Rodgers, a trade, a free agent, or will they just try and stick with Dwayne Haskins, Mason Rudolph? What do you think the future holds there with his replacement?
Well, first and foremost, from a free agent perspective, I really think the question is, what would a free agent rather do? Does a free agent quarterback, an elite one, want to come to Pittsburgh? So I think, with respect to the other options that might be out there, when it comes to the Saints, the Bears, whatever, wherever you're looking potentially, for that to happen, maybe even, the Washington football team, that's still a good defense. I mean, who knows if the Washington football team's eyes are Googling at Deshaun Watson, we can even talk about if the Panthers is still a team that, somebody, a player wants to come to as a free agent, with everything that's kind of going back and forth, particularly if Matt Rule is the head coach and not the head coach, and just kind of all the uncertainty as I kind of pivot away from what you were just saying with the Steelers. Sure. But I think the first thing is, does a free agent want to come to Pittsburgh? Secondly, they do have some depth already on the team. Dwayne Haskins hasn't really gotten an opportunity to, see how he can, emerge after everything that he dealt with at Washington, that he, quite frankly, brought on himself. And then also, what are the prospects in the draft? Now, last night I was just interviewing Kayvon Thibodeau. We were talking about the top of, I just did that one-on-one yesterday. Matter of fact, I'm going to get ready to cut up some clips from it after this, but we were just talking about the top of the draft, with Detroit and the Jets and the Giants and things like that. And, there are some people out there who feel like it's not necessarily a quarterback strong, so they would go with an Aiden Hutchinson or a Kayvon Thibodeau or what have you. So, depending on the team, what I'm trying to say is that they may feel the quarterback is not there for them at the top, and you have to scour in third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth round. So yes, that option is always there to be a good scout and find the talent. That's not the obvious big board, right. Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, whoever else, Will Brinson, mock draft, whoever. Yes.
No, that's not me. Ryan Wilson.
There you go. Yeah. Ryan Wilson.
I mean, I think
I just started working here. Okay. So
it's fine. It's fine. I appreciate you thinking that I might know what I'm talking about with the draft. I would be shocked, frankly, at this point, if the Lions went with a quarterback at number one overall. Not because they don't need one. They do need one. But I think that the organization has actually come to the correct realization that until they build around, they need to do it Buffalo Bills style. You need to build up around the quarterback, get a defense that isn't miserable. Get an offensive line that can protect the quarterback. Build up everything around, and then you drop the quarterback in. And I think if you draft Sam Howell first overall, or you draft Matt Corral, or you draft Kenny Pickett first overall, or Carson Strong, those guys are going to, absolute best case scenario is they have Matthew Stafford's career with the Lions, which people rip on constantly because he just didn't win enough games. There's not enough on that roster where they can draft a quarterback. So there will be options, I think, for a team like the Steelers if they don't make the playoffs in the middle of that first round. Maybe the Steelers want to get hometown legend Kenny Pickett, who just completed an incredible season in Pittsburgh.
The problem, too, though, is that when you bring in a rookie potentially all the other veterans who are there are going to either be with it or not with it, depending on their own goals, their own contract incentives that they got to hit or what have you. So then there are people looking at that like, am I trying to be here? You know what I'm saying? You have free agents who are looking at like, am I trying to go to that team? So all of that stuff is obviously, as you know, interconnected. But
if you're a player who's been with the Steelers over the last 17 years, you probably still aren't there if you were there 17 years ago, but mostly you've seen a veteran quarterback starting. You are not somebody who is used to playing with a rookie quarterback because Big Ben's been the constant. And even when he's been hurt, they're not trotting out. I mean, maybe Mason Rudolph played a little bit when he was a rookie, but by and large, you're playing with a veteran quarterback. So I think that does become difficult. On the other hand, I mean, we've seen enough of Mason Rudolph, right? And they haven't played Dwayne Haskins over Mason Rudolph. I mean, there's some people around the Steelers, I think, who do believe that Mason Rudolph can be the guy. And so then it becomes like, if you're a Steelers player, you're like, well, look, man, I mean, we're trying to win. And I'm not sure that's the answer. I mean, can they be involved in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes?
I don't think so.
Really? Mm-hmm. Even with that little sly grin from Tomlin to Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers and Tomlin to the sideline? Everybody all aflutter.
I don't think so.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it's a fit. I'm not saying that because of something that Rodgers has said or because it's like NFL insight, so to speak. That really is just my opinion that I just don't think it's a fit with the way that the synergy of Aaron, how he operates and kind of his, I would sooner feel that it feels better for him to be in New Orleans
or Denver or something
and just because of previous conversations there, air quotes, Elway and things like that. Maybe even that. I don't know. I just don't see. I don't know. That wouldn't be my.
Is it pick. Like a sort of like Rodgers does what Rodgers wants, and that's not really the Steeler way? Is that kind of?
I just think that he is obviously used to and deserves so much autonomy with the way that he does things and how he's used to, and then also the personality type. Just when
that doesn't really fly in Pittsburgh. Like even doesn't have that.
When you say it, like the automatically energy, I'm like, that doesn't jive for me. That's just what comes to me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I don't think they'll be involved in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes because of the draft pick cost, unless there's a change at general manager or in the front office. Kevin, that's not Kevin Colbert's style, I don't think, to give up a ton of first round picks. He doesn't even trade in the first round. Like he just sits at his pick and takes them.
Yeah.
So that would be a little surprising to me. Maybe that. All right. Well, that's gonna be interesting then. I mean, I don't know. There's just not a ton of. I mean, Russell Wilson. That would be. No, that's. I mean, Matt Ryan.
Maybe. What?
Matt Ryan. Maybe he'll get cut by the Falcons. You sign him
and do what and go where? No,
to Pittsburgh. No. I don't know. He would fit synergy wise.
I
wouldn't fit behind the offensive line.
I think not that I would impart my own thoughts on someone's in that way, but it may be a good discussion to have as to whether this also should be the end for Matt Ryan as well.
Interesting. I don't think he'll walk away, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not a Falcon next year. That's
that for sure. But who else would take would take Matt in comparison to some of the other quarterback options that potentially could be out there that are more elite, and then also with the other option of just rebuilding around someone in the draft. Unless it's like Joe Flacco-ish and you're willing to come in and understand that you're that for sure. Let me be clear, that for sure. But walking to another team as the immediate starter, I don't see that.
Okay. All right. A lot to be decided in Pittsburgh. Will be interesting for sure. Let's take a break. When we come back, head coaching vacancies to monitor. Indeed. All right. So, coaching cycle is coming around. Although, I mean, I don't know how the NFL head coaching cycle even can consider or plan or like imagine competing with what we've seen in college football. I mean, my goodness gracious. It would be like Bill Belichick going to Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin going to Tampa Bay and Bruce Arians going to San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan going to Dallas. Like that's like what happened in college football. Instead, we'll probably have, sort of a standard-ish cycle in terms of people who get fired and then brought back into the cycle. Given the way that the Patriots played on Monday night, there's a chance in the game plan they had, and we give all the credit to Bill Belichick and a run heavy plan, but Josh McDaniels is the one who drew up the plays, calls the plays, executes the offense. Mac Jones handed off. Can Josh McDaniels get his name back in the cycle again? It's always there, but it's never been in like since the Indy thing, it hasn't felt like it's going to be like a surefire closed deal thing.
So first and foremost, obviously I was talking a lot about this on Twitter, and I was just really surprised because I don't, talk about the Patriots super often on my timeline, but I was just surprised at the amount of Josh McDaniels hate that was in my timeline. And I was just like, wow, it has been so long since this guy coached in Denver. He was 32 at the time. It is like over 10 years ago. And then the Colts thing was two plus seasons ago or what have you, in which he decided not to go to Indianapolis. Oh, and by the way, won a Super Bowl after deciding not to do that. And after, having this thing with Cam, okay, and then this season boldly, I think, not deciding to go with him and then being on this 7-game win streak. And you could just talk about all of the stats right now during their 7-game win streak, let alone the fact that they're top of the AFC, top AFC East, all of that stuff. And then all I was hearing is, no, that was Bill Belichick's plan. He's the master puppeteer. It was Bill Belichick. Well, first of all, just because Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times, running is still a part of the offensive plan. Like all of a sudden, because it wasn't passing, so now that makes it more Bill Belichick because it was running. No, that is not only Josh, by the way, even if it is running, adjusting to the circumstances of all the wind and whatever was going on, and doing that for this entire 7-game win streak. Of course, he deserves credit. That and by the way, this is the way I like to ask the flip of it, Will. What are the Patriots looking like if he's not the offensive coordinator? That's what you have to.
I think they're not nearly as good a football team. I mean, there's a reason that Belichick wanted to lure McDaniels back to New England.
You take off all that headache because he's got it. That is a huge thing. You want to know how I can give you a great example of how huge that is? Here's the great example. Think of Dan Quinn after he fired the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and special teams coordinator in Atlanta and proceeded to understand how much was delegated to those guys in the year after. So, of course, that is a big thing. So to go to your question, I for sure think he definitely deserves to be in the head coaching cycle. I know that he wants to obviously, be a head coach again. I am trying to nail down whether that means that he will put himself in the coaching cycle or just knowing how great of a prospect are. Because as we talked about before, the eye test, we all know that Mac Jones is a great prospect to work around. So hard to leave that, right, Will?
I mean, it's like Belichick. He was like, well, you can't leave the nest when Belichick might make you the next guy. And then it's like, well, now he just reloaded with a quarterback who might be
he may never leave. That's the point. He may exactly, Will. So if he may never leave, and if you want a head coach again, when do you do that? So you're looking at the fact that there's an interim head coach with the Raiders. Are you attracted, with that job, working with Derek Carr? You're looking at the fact that we'll see what happens in Chicago. Nagy, what happens there. You take a look at, what happens.
It feels like there might not be. So like the Bengals were a team that could open up, and now they're 7-5 and they're in pretty good shape. I mean, the Texans could certainly open up, and he has connections to that front office. If they were to fire David Culley after 1 year. There's an argument that Jacksonville could open up if something happened to Urban Meyer. So maybe, the Texans we're going to trade.
Let me just insert this. I think that the Texans organization really, really does like David Culley.
Sure. I
think that even if for some reason that would be, and I haven't asked specifically about that, so I feel like I could find that out. But my current feeling is that he would have the option to still maybe do something within that organization, even just as a sign of respect, let alone how they feel about the guy. But yeah, continue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about how there's only one or two. I mean, there are going to be more because this is how the NFL works, right? I mean, it's like you look around there, God, there only going to be 2 teams hiring new head coaches.
That's a good thing. It means that people are not losing their jobs.
Of course. But I mean, it's going to end up being like 4 or 5. That's just how it works. Like something weird will happen. Maybe Minnesota's a wild card if they finish out poorly. I think the Bears look like a very good bet to change things over. I would think the Giants are a pretty good bet as well. If you're getting rid of Dave Gettleman, you're bringing in a new GM, you're going to foist, to borrow a word from Larry David, Joe Judge on him. But I mean, the Raiders could be adding a new head coach, and then maybe, I mean, it's hard to find teams that are definitely going to be hiring a new head coach, So,
yeah, I feel that it maybe is 2, maybe 3. There have been coaching cycles where 6 and 7 jobs have come up. And I don't think this is going to be one of them. I think it could have potentially been Philadelphia if Nick Sirianni wasn't, starting to get some off and on juice there. And I don't think that teams want to be herky jerky. There's been a lot of change, and it's not good for the quarterbacks of those teams either to constantly be going through those upheavals. So it's not the preference. I feel like it would have to be like really dramatic. And if it happened in Minnesota, and God forbid, I mean, they just look, it was hashtag fire everyone on Twitter after they lost to the Lions.
Right.
So if for some reason, and I think that's also, pushing the pressure on Dalvin Cook to come back, because initially it was, and that's the game tonight, 2 weeks for that shoulder dislocation. Now it's 11 days, and a good potential to come back, although it's still a game time decision. That's what I heard and tweeted. The pressure is definitely on, especially after losing against the Lions and then having this game be a national game where everyone's watching. Like, yeah, if it was hashtag fire everyone after that and they come back 2 games in a row and they lose this game and it's been some spectacular fashion or some dubious, coaching decision that has everyone talking,
then maybe Minnesota, I think, qualifies along with Seattle and Carolina, where you have coaches with job security for various reasons, because either Mike Zimmer longevity, Pete Carroll the Super Bowl and winning a ton of games, and then Matt Rule that huge contract, where maybe Pete Carroll's like, you know what? And I really don't think this will happen, that Pete Carroll will just walk away from the Seahawks, because he has basically full control of that organization. But maybe he decides to hang it up. That would be a really interesting spot for Josh McDaniels if that was the case, because you have Russell Wilson, who might be much more inclined to stick around and try and make things work if he got an offensive-minded coach who helped Tom Brady win Super Bowls. And then in Carolina, they don't have a quarterback. But if David Tepper calls Josh McDaniels and says, I'm trading for Deshaun Watson, and that is happening in the next 90 days. And he's like, well, how can you be so sure? He's like, you won't have any draft picks for a while, but I'm trading for him. Maybe that's enough to lure McDaniels there. I don't know. Just sort of thinking about.
Well, I was just going to say in Seattle, though, and this goes for the journalism business as I feel like it does for the NFL. Sorry, I keep leaning back. Sorry. Producer, because I know how that is. I produce a podcast, so I know how that is. So I just think that it goes back to, talent evaluation too. And a lot of times, whether it's at a TV network or our business, or you're looking at the NFL, like at some point when you keep getting rid of talent, it's going to catch up. And you think about what amount and the type of talent that was on that team going back to the LOB days, and the talent that is not there, now. I mean, obviously some of these players are older, but you're looking at your Earl Thomases, your Shaq Griffin, who, went to Jacksonville, didn't keep him. You're looking at KJ Wright. You're looking at Frank Clark that, went out the door,
you had multiple top 10 defensive linemen, a top 10 linebacker, KJ Wright, and then two top 5 safeties or top 10 safeties, Chancellor and Earl, and Richard Sherman, who's a top 5 cornerback throughout his career. You lose all of that, and look, one, it's hard to replace it all. But two, I mean, if you lose all that and you don't draft well for a period of 3 or 4 years, your team's not going to be very good.
Now, understand Cam, because, Cam got hurt in that big collision in the back of the end zone with Earl Thomas that remember, and Cliff Aver also got, a neck injury. So those were, that's
those dudes wouldn't be playing now anyway. They would have been out of football by now anyway. And I think Seattle is interesting because they're similar to Minnesota. There's this belief of, here's how we're going to play football. We're going to run the football. The quarterback is ancillary to the run game, and then we're going to play great defense. And that's a fine identity if you have Bill Belichick's team right now, or the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch. But when you have a bad defense, and no offense to Alex Collins is your primary back, and you're making Russell Wilson the ancillary piece, like you can't have that identity when the reality of the circumstances is inverse to what you want it to be. I mean, like, you have a great quarterback, dynamic receiving weapons in Russ Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, who's now hurt, of course. And you have good running backs, Dalvin Cook, great running back, but like you're leaning on the wrong thing. And so that's sort of why I wonder if that might just become a breaking point for ownership as it relates to those two coaches.
And then I was going to ask you too, what's your opinion of DK Metcalf? Because, here's a guy last year that was, was burning it up, and, everyone was DK. But what do you feel is the, perception of his play, and just even of how I don't even know how he comports himself, just during the games as well. What do you think?
I think that, as with in most cases with NFL players or any athlete really, that his production has gone down, and therefore it is less amusing when DK is doing crazy stuff on the sidelines. And I mean,
that's such a nice doily way to say it.
What's a doily?
I think that's the thing. Is that the thing that you put under the crochet looking thing you put
that is a doily.
Yeah, that you put under your tee. So
I thought you mean like that's a nice like Greg.
That's what I mean. No. I mean, that's a good nice way to say it.
It prevents the burning. It's like
It's like when I'm talking to a statistician at CBS Sports HQ, Justin Page, and I'm asking him about a guy, and the stat is not good, and he was like, "Yeah, it's poor," and I was like, "That's such a that's another way of saying he stinks, but it's poor."
Well, I mean, so I liken it a little bit to we talked about Odell Beckham and how on the sidelines with the Giants he would have these just like making love to a kicking net, or making out with a kicking net, and like throwing stuff all over the place. But people were like, I mean, that's crazy, but this dude is balling out. And if you're doing it on the sidelines when you're not playing well, or you're throwing a temper, like all of a sudden the pacifier mouthpiece just becomes a little less cute and funny when you're not playing well, but he's not being targeted. They have some problems on that roster in Seattle. And so,
but you know what? Let me give you one more analogy there too. I feel like, especially I've covered the NFL over 15 years now. I'm telling my age. And I have watched multiple guys come in the league and be just really imbued with this self-assuredness and confident and blue chip mentality and all of this stuff or what have you. And then invariably they go through that second or third year, or even an injury that, kind of, breaks them down and makes them humble and, has them really kind of just, come to, eye level with how things are in life. And then they kind of have this, cycle of reappreciation. And one good example of that I can give too is Noshawn Moreno, when I covered him, with the Denver Broncos, and how he came, I believe, out of Georgia? I think he was a Georgia product, and blue chip or what have you. And then I think within a few years had ACL in one, ACL in another, and everything just changed. And I remember when he first came into the locker room, and of course he's accomplished a lot. I get it. I was a D1 athlete myself, so it's not a knock, but certainly Noshawn knew about Noshawn. Okay. You know what I'm saying? And then things changed, and so it'd just be interesting to watch the arc of, not just DK, but, all these players too. And sometimes, just like we all have to deal with life. And sometimes life, brings you to size, and then you have to, deal with what you have to deal with,
Yeah. I mean, look, DK's had I'm pretty sure it was, it was Elijah Moore who did the peeing thing in the Egg Bowl. You know what I'm talking about when he you know what I'm talking about?
No.
For the Egg Bowl, which is like Ole Miss versus because Ole Miss had Elijah Moore, DK, and AJ Brown at the team at the same time. Wait,
Okay.
I thought it was DK who did the dog pee celebration.
I don't know.
Yes,
and I'm not a big college football I knew it person. Was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's where they're in the Egg Bowl, they're playing the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss versus Mississippi State. DK scores a touchdown. He gets down on all fours and lifts his right leg up in the air. They penalize him. They miss the extra point, lose the game. But like, so DK goes, DK has big high and low waves. Like he was a top 5 pick after he ran the 40, and then he does the cone drills, and all of a sudden he's a 2nd round pick. And then as a rookie, he's a monster. And, and now he's sort of down a bit. It feels like he has very, very high highs and very low lows.
And maybe some of that, as you even just described that, I thought very well, has to do with, and I don't know this because obviously I'm not in his head. I'm just asking because we're talking, we're commentators, I only talk, but a level of engagement. Maybe his level of engagement is in line with those hills and valleys. I don't know. It's a question. That would be a question I would ask. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think actually Elijah Moore and DK Metcalf both did the peeing celebration.
Are you Googling this?
Pee celebration.
What are you putting in the search bar? Did DK Metcalf do?
No, I just heard DK Metcalf Egg Bowl. I didn't write DK Metcalf dog pee celebration.
I was curious what you were Googling to find out.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. Okay, Elijah Moore is the one who cost him. DK Metcalf's the one that had done it previously, but then the guy who started it was Odell Beckham. Remember, because he started it on the side. He started it, and John Mara was all up in arms. Oh, how you can't celebrate like that.
Yes, I remember. I was there.
Dogs never pee. Anyway, this is effectively gone off the rails. It's like, how dare you imitate a dog urinating? Oh, that's what we need to worry about.
Right.
Very quickly, some names who you think should be. We mentioned Josh McDaniels, but some other names who should be in the coaching cycle that you think or deserve recognition, deserve to be talked about. We certainly have a ways away, but I'm sure any assistants that pop to mind.
I think that I do think that Vance should get another shot, and
Vance Joseph in Arizona.
Yeah,
defense,
in Arizona.
Top 5 defense this year.
Yes, he should get another shot. I do think the defensive coordinator for the Giants is worth conversations. I do think that Byron Leftwich should be in the conversations after, obviously winning a Super Bowl, having the experience to work with Tom Brady, as Josh McDaniels also built up his lore working with the same quarterback as well. So I do think that.
Todd Bowles, if we're talking Bucks, throw Todd Bowles in there too.
Of course, Todd Bowles.
I thought Todd Bowles is a good coach with the Jets, and it's just the Jets. Just don't ever take the Jets job, people.
Well, listen, I'll tell you exactly where it went off the rails. So they started off their first season 10-6. Okay. Obviously, Fitzpatrick did, what he did at the end of that season. But because the next year Fitzpatrick felt like he deserved, a certain contract, and that organization allowed it to go through the entire offseason, it literally ruined the vibe. And that vibe went into the next, and they didn't recover. So had they just given Fitzpatrick his respect, at least what had happened coming off of Todd Bowles' first season do you know how hard it is to be 10-6 your first year? When you come to an organization with all of that going on, he was 10-6. And because they didn't do it right after, that's to me that was the crucial, dividing highway that caused it. But anyways,
it's like Brian Flores this year, 10-6 last season, and now it's like, whoa, what's going wrong here? We might have to fire this guy. It's like, he went 10-6 last year. Settle down.
Right. So I guess it's just better to be 3-13 and just incrementally get get
that is actually
lower the roof. When you first come to
the ceiling is the roof, and it needs to be. Lower.
That in Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. That is a very Carolina. That is a very Carolina saying from.
Yes, not very smart. Not very.
I can't remember who it was.
Michael Jordan. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I know.
Famous Carolina alumni.
Yeah.
some other names that we just had. Brian Daboll is kind of interesting because he's probably sliding down the list after the way the Bills' offense has been, and Josh Allen has sort of reverted back to the mean. Matt Eberfluss out of Indianapolis, the defensive coordinator, he's done a great job his entire time there. And
yes, I agree with that. That's a good one.
What even supposed to be on? He was supposed to be on Josh McDaniels' staff. McDaniels hired him. He was already in place with the Colts, and then he didn't leave when Frank Reich was hired, and is worked out really well.
Yeah, I'm trying
Eric Bieniemy,
of
course. Terod Mayo and D'Amico Ryans are two guys that I think are interesting. Former,
yes.
You talk about feeling old.
Well, listen, I like that D'Amico Ryans too. I mean, I just go back to how I feel like that defense was playing when they played against the Rams, and it was, OBJ's first game. And, a lot of times when I'm watching Red Zone, I don't get a chance to like sit up there and watch an entire game. And so when it's a game, when it's like a Thursday night or a Monday night and I can, watch it, focus on one team, I was really, those boys came out like, I was feeling, it was almost like shades of LOB. Like they had their tongues out, their provoking tongues out. Yes, for that one. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's depressing because we're approaching the point of the coaching cycle where guys who were drafted in the NFL after I started covering the league are now being hired as head coaches or being.
Listen, I drink out the fountain of youth. Ponce de Leon, speak for yourself. I'm still the same age as I was.
You're the one who aged yourself. I've only.
I know, right?
We haven't done it like 11 or 12 years too. I mean, it's like,
I'm like, who let the dogs out?
Yeah, sorry. Whoop, there it is.
Am I showing my age now?
I know, right?
Or you know what it was? Wait.
Speaking
of Carolina, when I was doing my show the other night, I think we were talking about someone brought up Petey Pablo. Who am I, Petey Pablo? Right, Carolina Rays. It's like, oh God, we're clearly showing our age now.
I know. All right, we're showing our age too much. Let's get out of here before we before I just like hold up my social security card or something and like tell
or you get charged by us singing all these songs.
That's right. Yeah. We'll get a Apple violation and people find out how old we are. Josina, as always, a pleasure. We'll chat next week. Thanks, and talk to you soon.
All right, you too, Will. Good times.
All right.